White Roses by Amina Atiq. I run this English garden through my hands, making memory. Here, between silent moments, I sit with Simon, a survivor. His brother's arm wrapped around him in love, their hidden childhood sculptured in one magical piece of grey and brown stone, sunshine seeping in their loneliness. Even in the shadows there is light, and I promise to greet your brother, Joseph, before I run this garden through my hands, a story so far apart from my own.
I was born in 1938 in a small town called Radziwiłów, then part of Poland.
A father carrying his son on his back across a lake to escape a ghetto with his mother and brother.
Do not ask me to forget. I cannot remember everything. Do not ask me to forgive. I cannot, unless you confess and beg for forgiveness.
I run this garden of 1,000 white roses through my hands.
I dedicate my rose to my mother Batya and father Yitzhak, who saved my life 1,000 times in the darkest times.
And when the world ties its mouth and veils its eyes for the Holocaust to grow, the vultures must chase chaos.
Life was good until 1936.
First, an anti-Jewish putsch. Families facing economic crisis, livelihood stripped away, and what happens when prejudice has many faces?
First, the Russians came. Then Germany invaded Russia, and German boots were heard on the stone pathways of our town. The Ukrainians shouted, "Our saviors have arrived."
It burnt the twinkle in the children's eyes, swallowed their smiles, and they tried to steal their Polish memories. The only shining star in the dark was their parents' love.
Along came SS men. Jews must wear white armbands with a blue Star of David. Jews must hand in all radios. Jews must not leave town.
When darkness is unleashed, where does childhood go? What happens to rainbows? Where does a child learn to play when their eyes witness vultures with no feelings in their bones? Men sent to the forest, handed shovels to dig and dig. These would be graves for their loved ones, then told to run home quickly, whilst helpless to the cries from behind trees. The Torah thrown out onto the street.
They burnt the prayer books and the scrolls. The rabbi was forced to dance around the fire.
Men forced to sweep the streets, dig graves, and where does a homesick child learn to play before they can run from soldiers? And when the sea is safer than the land? If only we stopped running away from stories that belong to us. If only Britain had responded sooner.
The streets were surrounded with barbed wire. This became the ghetto.
Living between ghettos of tall brick, barbed wire, drenched in blood, learning to run before they can play. And when there is hope in small gold bars hidden behind the nails and screws of a father's brush, a currency for survival, the first miracle for escape. I run this garden of hope through my hands, here, between silent moments. Where does childhood go? Told to run, hide and seek refuge in a cornfield, when speaking in another tongue saves you.
The miracle is that I was able to speak to those men at all in Ukrainian, which was not my native tongue. My father had taught me just enough to survive.
And what of children who leave their lips tangled to the home they leave behind? children who stopped running feeling helpless and cut off from the world. Who will be next? They ask. If only we hadn't grown distant in black and white moving pictures. And what meaning do we make of the past when we spent a lifetime running away from stories which didn't belong to us?
I didn't tell my story for 50 years. Nobody was interested. How do I know all this? My father wrote a testimony and I listened to him trying to explain the inexplicable.
When a child is born in the wrong time and the wrong place, does he ask for this? Who is to blame? And when a child roams the world to seek refuge, what does he lose? If only we stopped running away from stories that belong to us. If only we listen. I look into your glass eyes, a world without prejudice. Can that ever be? If only hearts can grow in 1,000 white roses. I leave this garden knowing a parent's sacrifice can be the strongest victory. Their sacrifice, a passport to freedom. I leave the garden, running through my hands, in the thorns of a vulture with many faces. Prickles perish into lonely ashes, flourishing in the backbone of the stem, in everlasting remembrance. This stone will not die, and white roses will fill the fields of missing families and absent gravestones.
I am forever grateful to my mother and father.
God sent rain, and love must conquer, for life is not ours to take, not ours. This garden will grow, heal, and we will look for stones to place on top of the hill, for the 1.5 million Jewish children.
Amongst the grey shadows, there was a ray of light.